So this is our system landscape, and I'm going to go back and go to the beginning. So we have a few key external systems. First, we have Sneak, Secret Network Entry and Access Keeper. So this is an external system, highly secure. We have these clients who have existing, this could be a stock trading application. This could be any system that predates us. And what it do is it's going to control access to everything. So it's going to say who gets access to what things, what mechanisms, and as such. So Sneak. Okay, so Sneak will use a very specific integration user with proper elevated permissions. So Sneak exists. We have SAP. That has all of our project level data, but I'm throwing a curveball where our users are operatives, and no operative can ever directly log into SAP. But we need data from SAP, and we need data using proper credentials. So that means that Matt, logging into Salesforce, can pull data from SAP, but only as Matt. So but he never touches SAP. Salesforce will touch it. What's that? Salesforce Connect? Maybe, depending on the requirements. As Matt, though. Okay. So it's got to not carry an integration user. It's got to somehow log in as Matt to SAP. Okay, that's the curveball. Notice no operatives ever log in, so single sign-on's off the table. So you can't do single sign-on. All right. And some of you, we're going to break you into teams, and not all of you will solve this puzzle. We have the ORB, Operations Relay and Briefing System. Now, this is a system that generates the briefings and will push into Salesforce as specific users. So it needs to call into Salesforce. So Salesforce had to call out as Matt. This system needs to call in as Matt. So it updates the records for Matt. And it'll be on the system landscape, and not all of you will solve this problem. And then I'll go back in the slides as needed. Then we have Eagle. We have the event, and only one of the teams will need to deal with Eagle. So Eagle is our vigilant sentinel, monitoring and logging every event, and nothing escapes Eagle's watchful gaze. So Eagle is logging security events, key events, and may take action. So here's our system landscape. Users only reach Salesforce. Sneak updates assignments. Orb pushes briefings. You don't have to memorize all of this. When you go through your requirements, we'll flip back and forth. Salesforce can access SAP, but notice the users do not. Eagle catches events, and there is an IDP. All right, we'll get there. All right, now we're going to do, we have facilities where these operatives will enter. They can only use Salesforce in a secure facility. It's a briefing, a laboratory, or a testing. Once you enter, you can log in, and it knows where you are and will only give you information relative to your physical location. Oh, you see, now you start to see where I'm taking you on the journey. So we're going to have to solve this. All right. We work on confidential projects. I can't talk about them. Team members are assigned missions through an external system called Sneak. So you will be dynamically assigned to a project and dynamically revoked from a project. And that could be on an hourly basis. So record level access, granted or revoked potentially in real time. And so you never know when your next project will be. So this is, what have I taken off the table? A lot of your sharing mechanisms have been taken off the table. We're going to break up into teams. And since we could either go into 2 teams and you can each tackle 2 pieces, you could each just take one. So Team Phantom is authentication authorization. Team Cypher was integrations. Team Enigma, the crazy puzzle, is record security. And Team Stealth is platform monitoring. So a question is, do you want to each, we could split in the middle and you each take 2 teams, or you could split and each just take 1. So how about if we go back and forth? Well, like, see, we have 5 and we've got 5. So we got 2 equal teams based on the table separation. So over here, we'll go back and forth. You each get to decide whether you want one of the 4, and then you can tell me whether you want to solve the other puzzle. Matt and I will give you all the answers at the end to what was the mechanism we intended. So over here, do you want to be Phantom with authentication authorization, Cipher with integrations, and I may offer you a second one after they choose. Maybe we go choice, 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 and choice. You get first choice and last choice. Let's do that way. All right. Which team might you like to choose?
I would go for record security.
Okay. All right. So you've grabbed Enigma. So this team is Enigma. Now, do you all want to tackle 1, which is less time working it out, and then a little more time talking, or do you want to try to tackle 2 teams for fun? 2 teams? 2. All right. All right. Well, what we're going to do is...
Do we have 2 topics per team?
We will do 2 topics per team. Let's do this. Now, because you're second, you get the next 2 choices. And then they get the remaining choice. So first, I think that's a more fair. I have twin boys. I have come up with these mechanisms. I tried, split the cookie. Then one cuts it, one eats it. And the problem is then they counted the chocolate chips. So I have twins, so I've worked out. So the best that works is first choice, second, third, and then back to fourth. That's how I keep my kids from killing each other. Okay. So which 2 would you like to tackle? Not record level security. Yeah, far away.
Yeah.
Integration, and then what's the next one? Monitoring?
Just the same.
All right, so you're taking integration, authentication. Oh, it's worked out. You 2 have Enigma and Stealth, and you have Phantom and Cipher. All right, so you have your brains ready to go. Authentication and integrations, and you have record level and platform monitoring. All right, so you guys know your 2 teams. Phantom, Cipher, Enigma, Stealth. Okay, hands-on, part 1. You're going to be trying to solve that. And I will let you come up. You probably should use your phones and take pictures. I'm going to read them really quick. So Team Phantom, use MFA, can only log in from facilities, can only log in designated hours, can only use laptops issued by C3, configured, pre-configured, and session timeouts, no more than 30 minutes. And when logging in, we need to make sure that they're in a facility that they have been properly assigned to. Okay, so you got a picture that you can share among, that's you guys, right? Or is that you guys? That's you guys. I'm looking, wrong eye contact. There we go. Mission, there's your mission. You got a picture? Good to go? Your second one. You can view SAP data within Salesforce without copying the data. Certain fields should only be visible from a specific page and not across Salesforce. And when submitting changes to SAP, the change should be the user of the ID, the operative, and not a shared user account. So I have messed with you and taken and hamstrung you on a few mechanisms. You got it. Now we're going to switch to the other team. Facilities should become visible only if we add a child object, a facility operative. Projects should be visible only if we add a project operative. Briefings, laboratories, and tests are child objects with lookup relationships. And how will you control access? And provide details for how I'll auto-provision and deprovision the operatives if they've been compromised. So you got a picture? And then, key data should be encrypted at rest. Easy. Track all access and send that to Eagle, external system. Monitor for high-risk actions and near real-time revoke access. What's that answer? And for critical alerts, Eagle can revoke access automatically. All right. So that is your first. Start solving, and I'll be happy to go up and back. Your 10 minutes begins now. You had the paper, pens. Here's your binders. I'll let you mess with it. Anybody ask? I can page up and down. What's that? Well, we'll go around, do the read back, and then what we'll do is any that you can't solve, Matt and I will be here to talk about what the architect solution is for that. Read out. All right, the classified person of unknown position. So, sorry, I actually have been in Langley, and it was a pretty crazy experience, but that's another story. So, all right. Yeah, there's people with badges, no names. It's a crazy experience. Okay. So what we're here to do is we're going to talk about solving this. And we'll go through each one and hear the team's solution. What I like about this over the standard well-architected is we break into 4 groups, like a Dreamforce and TDX, and then all 4 teams solve the same problem. And then by the time you're the 3rd team, you're like, that's exactly what I said. That this way, when we do each readout, you're each going to hear what the other did. And then Matt and I, whatever doesn't get covered, we're here to add ourselves. So I hope this is a little more fun and not as repetitive. And we did push the boundary, so you're going to hear about integration architect and identity access. So let's go here. Who had Phantom? All right. Tell me, solve for these requirements.
So for the MFA,
permission that we can use.
What's that?
For MFA, we have a system permission that we can use on the profile.
Oh, I should be giving this. There we go, practicing. All right, keep going.
yeah, go on, say about MFA.
Yeah, MFA, we thought about using system profile. There is a system permission that we will have to enable on the profile level.
Okay, tell me about number 2. How do you solve number 2? Only login from facilities, known IP addresses.
IP ranges.
So you're going to have IP ranges.
Yes, and you can have it on org level or on profiles.
Okay, all right.
One question for that then. How do you ensure that, not just on login, that the IP ranges are checked, but every request IP ranges are checked?
So the catch-22, Matt is throwing a curveball. What if I take a laptop and I'm inside the Wi-Fi and I log in and then I walk outside and switch over to my cellular plan and go out and my session is still active? So my session has been initiated on an IP range, but then it flips.
There's a the setting you can set which increases the level of.
Highest. Okay.
Still doesn't stop from every request on IP ranges.
And your answer?
There is a setting under session settings that you can check, a checkbox you can check that requires on every request to validate the IP ranges. When you have IP permissions, it's only checking on login.
Okay, that's good to know.
See, this was the education, not just a quiz.
you.
All right, now staying on this curveball, when logging in, I'm going to be assigned to a particular facility. Now, the IP ranges are for all facilities, but what if Steve has only been authorized to one of them? How do you control which IPs I get to log into? You've whitelisted all my secret facilities, right?
User level?
There is no user
No.
level IP ranges. So what is a mechanism at login, and I'm leading the horses to water, that can validate your IP address? Nope. Not login IP ranges, you create a fixed range across the profile of every one of my top secret facilities, and you've whitelisted all of them. But Steve only can go to one of them. So how can you make sure that Steve isn't in a facility he's not authorized to use? You're not going to create a billion permutations of profiles and switch Steve around.
Permission?
Nope.
But,
You want to catch the login.
Is it the IDP?
Nope. Mhm. All right, anybody know the answer? Login flow. You can write a login flow that will have gotten through the first level of access with their all IP ranges, and then can get access to their particular IP and do a query against their facility assignment. So this would be login flows. Now, session timeouts, that's pretty straightforward. Tell me how you would do the laptops only issued by C3.
The only thing I came up with was installing a certificate on the device.
Beautiful. A client-side certificate installed. That's a beautiful solution to that one. Excellent. All right, really nice responses. Just a little bit of adding in the login flows, and you were right there. Now we have be able to view SAP data without copying it.
Salesforce Connect.
Salesforce
with
Connect.
external objects.
Certain fields from SAP should only be visible from a specific page and not across Salesforce. List views, never available on list views. So if I do Salesforce Connect, can't I list view the Salesforce Connect?
Oh, God.
And therefore, can't I, if I can list view it and I can see it on a page, can't I see it on a list view or report? How do I restrict it only to that page? So the first thing I do is don't include it in Salesforce Connect. And then the second thing I do is I build a what?
Lightning component, in system.
LWC.
An LWC that can then call SAP and get that particular data only. So if you ever have to keep data off list views, because remember, you start to say, oh, people can list view all the kinds of crazy data and do search. If you want it restricted, then you can't Salesforce Connect it, and you do a little LWC. Very nice. See how this combined team, we're rocking it? When submitting changes to SAP, how can Salesforce submit changes with the identity of the user without the user having logged in to SAP?
We said for user identification with passing access token.
How would you get the access to it? What is the OAuth flow that allows system A to call system B with impersonation?
Web server flow, isn't it?
Web server flow involves the human being involved. They get sent a little pop-up login screen and then a little access tokens pass. No human interaction with SAP. Connected app is the mechanism where you're going to configure this, but it's not the login flow. You would use JWT token. So you set up a digital cert, you authenticate SAP, and then you set up JWT token flow, which can then impersonate. So this requirement right here drove you to JWT. There's one other one. If there is an IDP, SAML bearer token flow would have worked. You didn't have to do single sign-on, but that is your answer. It's JWT token flow, or assuming SAP used the IDP. I actually had a client, Pacific Gas and Electric, one of the largest utilities in the US, and this is actually how I had to push data into SAP. I had Salesforce, I had an IDP, but the user never touched, and I actually would go get a SAML bearer token from the IDP and then send the data to SAP. So this is actually a use case I solved at a client, which was the SAML bearer token. So it's a headless way of impersonating a user on a secondary server. You either have JWT, where there's no IDP in the middle, but then I found that the SAP trusted the IDP. So all I had to do is have Salesforce go to the IDP and say, give me a SAML token I can present to SAP. SAP took it and let them in, and we did our updates. So that's actually a real client. All right. This is like tricky stuff, and this stuff works for a reason. All right. Over here. Facility should only be visible if Sneak, the external system, adds a facility operative. Project should be valuable if project operatives. These are lookup objects, so what did I take off the table? Master details. How do you control access?
Those three would be Apex managed sharing, because you're using a table that's either the facility operative or the project operative, to give access to the other records.
Beautiful. All right. And then you essentially have to cascade that all the way down to all the child objects. So that's pretty straightforward. If you're ready for Apex sharing, this was like pretty straightforward. And tell me about provisioning, deprovisioning.
There would be some, because the Apex managed sharing is driven usually, because it's a new setting, isn't it? It's being it calculates on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
So if the sneak can push in, basically push in, say it's compromised, set the record back to deactivate, and then obviously they won't be able to get access to the records they're no longer active.
Beautiful. So all you got to do is then come to these, have the mechanism which removes the operative or inactivates the operative and have the Apex triggering cascade. So that's all pretty straightforward. They look complicated, but if you know that the mechanisms exist, they're in your tool belt, you can solve for these. All right. Encrypted at rest, maximum security.
So we're going to do this on the fly because we had a lot of conversations
Okay.
about this.
Then you're on a CTA exam, Miss CTA candidate.
So key data should be encrypted at rest with maximum security. I'll be implementing Shield
Okay.
for that.
Track all access to Eagle, a secondary system.
So there would need to be on the event monitoring records that are created, possibly something like change data capture or something like that that picks them up and sends them straight through.
Okay, so
Streaming.
CDC to the streaming event. Monitor for high-risk actions and notify Eagle in near real time to revoke.
So I'll be listening with platform events for certain types of activities on those event monitoring records.
Okay. There's also a way in Salesforce to listen to this. Anybody know what that's called? What was that? You can actually create these little Apex triggers that can be listening for high actions. It's actually in event monitoring inside Salesforce without a secondary server. You can listen for a high-risk event, have a little Apex run, and call out alerts. Give me.
Part of Shield.
That is part of Shield. What's that?
That's part of event monitoring.
Yeah, that is part of Shield. Yeah, it's called enhanced transactional security right here. And so if you click, I knew this was one you'd want to see. What you can do is condition Apex versus Builder versus Apex, and you create little events that can be listening for things to happen. So that I thought was a fun one.
Also, when the change data capture, you want to be careful because it has a very low limit on the number of objects you can monitor. I think it's like 5, yeah.
Five, yeah. So you can purchase.
Beautiful.
Not extra objects, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So now what we'll do is, this is what we're showing you these mechanisms. Now there is a part 2. If we had 4 teams, you'd have knocked out your part 1, and then you'd have gone to part 2. So let's do this together as a group. Team Phantom, which we're all now a part of, we have to solve these requirements.
Permission sets, you can apply a time limit to those now.
There you go. There needs to be to remove them, time-based permission sets. How can I grant access to either briefings or laboratory or testing, but only for the duration of that login? So I want to have permission sets that are selective and then go away if I'm not. So I don't get briefing access if I'm not in a briefing room. I don't get laboratory if I'm not in a laboratory or lab. I'm saying that. Session, say you're halfway there.
Session activation.
Session activation. There is a way you can have a permission set that sits dormant on a user, and it has to be activated to be granted. So I would have a briefing session activation permission set, a laboratory session activate. I would have all 3 assigned to users, but they're essentially dormant until I activate them for the duration of the session. So, and I probably would like a login flow. So that way, they don't get access to briefings unless they're in a briefing center, nor laboratories, nor testing. I can then control record level access through Apex, but I can control structural access through my session activated permission sets.
So they have to log off.
If they logged off and yeah. I did in one of my talks on Steve Tech Arc, I said like a pilot doesn't have access to the runway object until their plane is actually on the runway. And then, they only get access when they're physically there. And then if they fly away, then they reactivate, they lose access. So this is like conditional profile access, session activation. So that was pretty easy. So if you knew about session activation and if you knew about the time permission, we're doing well on time. Cipher part 2. When Orb pushes data in, this is pretty straightforward. So Orb is calling into Salesforce, but it needs to push as Matt or as somebody else. What are our two choices to impersonate incoming? But this is the fun one. So we're calling an API into Salesforce, and I want it to push changes as Matt or Steve, not as the integration user. You got it. It's the same as calling to SAP. We just reciprocate. We either have a JWT token calling into Salesforce, or we have a SAML bearer token. All right, projects briefing. So this is where this came from Solvang. How do you say it? Solvang, head of Otisava, actually with critical information stored in Salesforce. We're going to go to encryption. So we're going to generate some data. We're going to put it on the project. It's going to be encrypted, and it's only visible to operatives who are assigned the project. And we want separate encryption keys per project. Note, what's that? So it's not Shield. No system admin. You have to be assigned to the project to decrypt.
Somehow link the key to the project record, but we don't want to put it in Salesforce. That would be crazy.
Yep. Actually, what they do is they don't store the key. They make an Apex call out to get the key. They get the key, and I made 50K. Why did I make it 50K? What is it small enough to go into? What kind of field has 121 byte limit? Long text area longs. So if I kept it under 50K, it doubled in size due to encryption. So how do I encrypt? What's the encryption mechanism I'm going to use? How will I encrypt something in Salesforce, use a key, and open it up? Not tenant. Apex crypto. So you just, it's for those that have done Apex, there's an Apex crypto class. All I need is to get the key. Let's say I use DES 256. All I need to do is they get to the project, I make a call out, I get the key, I read the data sitting in the long text area, less than 120, I made a 50K. I'm assuming like a 50% bloat due to encryption. And now it decrypts. And that is how they do some top secret projects, is they will actually store some data in Salesforce encrypted, but the keys are not in Salesforce. They have a proxy for the keys. And they use Apex crypto. So you can actually store it in Salesforce, encrypted, and not even sysadmins can see it. And you guard the key, the encryption key, and you make a web service call out to get it. These are things that are now tools in your tool belt.
But wouldn't it hit the limits if we make that many records per record? I mean, that many callouts per record?
You mean call it? So now you're worried about a call out limit. Let's assume this is confidential, top secret data that you only will pull at certain times, not like running reports or things. And you'd probably have this sitting on a little LWC that could tap. I hope this was fun. Had a little LWC that could hit it. All right. Projects should be displayed on the detail only if they're assigned to a level 3 or higher access on the project record.
Dynamic.
Field.
The permission set again process with session activation.
But then you're going to have to have it at level 1, level 2, so you could have the field level access. That's a slick one. She's got the gun. Give them the access with a special FLS permission set session activation and then code it. That's a slick answer. I hadn't thought about that one. So I love it. So we're going to put Mark. Do you see how she got around it? She made this one, the access to this field, a single session activated permission set and only granted to them if they're the level 3 in the project. Yep. If you're on the CTA exam, I'd be like, all right. Wasn't on our answer key, but I would call that a reasonably responded to on. On project, there's a child object that has a master detail. I have a type field. If it's priority, then only operatives can view it. How do I take children of a master detail and filter them? We got it. Restriction rules are the only mechanism that will take, normally you couldn't filter children, but you can now with what's called restriction rules. So if you had like line items that were hardware and line items that were software and you wanted to hide hardware or hide software, you couldn't do that if it's master detail, it's all or nothing. Now you get restriction rules, which will do that. Ding, nice little bell ring. What's that?
How do we become an operator?
I know, isn't that pretty cool?
Interested to work in all these things.
Yeah, what I'm showing you, these tools are now in your tool belt and you'll know when to ring them. What is a weakness of restriction rules? How many do you get? 5 per object. And only 1 can be active per user at a time. Okay. All right, so you ring that bell. Restriction rules. So this one was really slick. The other way was either the session activate permission or just drop a little LWC to show the field. So this, I drove you to an LWC, but the session activation was also a reasonable response. This one was driven by restriction rules. Okay. Should track all changes and store in Eagle. You just have to change data capture, determine org failover. Anybody have a second org for failover? Some people do. A whole second production org. An entire production org for failover.
Salesforce doing real-time replication.
Yes, and I had a client where one of my clients did 911 translations in the United States, like you call or in the US, it's 911. And then it would switch to like a Swahili speaker and they could like do well, they actually had 2 prod orgs. And because if Salesforce went down, probably because of a disaster, and chances are in a disaster, people are going to be calling 911. Therefore, they had to have it for even Salesforce goes down for how much times a year? 30 minutes per year. So even during those 30 minutes, they needed 911. So they actually had a second prod org for those 30 minutes a year and for those disasters. And this was one of my clients. And they actually had a complete second org replicated.
How did the replication work?
Salesforce will do a lot of that. Well, it does that. It has your hot failover, yeah. And full sandbox refreshes. What do you have to do for the masking? Salesforce's tool is anybody use a Salesforce data masking tool?
No, we have our own.
Own backup. There you go. There, just stand proud. There you go. All right. So I hope this was helpful. This was scenario. I did this at Your Architect Dreaming with 4 teams, and they each did part 1 and part 2. I'll beef up team stealth. That's a little weaker. I hope this is the 2 teams. Any questions? We've pushed authentication boundaries with the authentication, the sessions. We pushed integrations with the flows. We pushed record level security, profile level security, system level security. This is pretty much all the bells and whistles between data sharing and viz, integration, and OAuth. We didn't hit all the use cases, but we hit enough to make you think. I hope you enjoyed this.
It was really good. One question though. All of this stuff we're applying to all the users. What about the admins, the Salesforce admins? You've got to trust someone at some point.
That is, and what's that magic checkbox that drives everyone insane? View all data, modify all data to deploy. Oh, yeah, that just kills. And that's why, like Solvang said, that a lot of that data can't be seen by them. So that's why a lot of the data is stored encrypted. Whatever it is, it's encrypted in Salesforce, and they can't get to the keys. Yeah, so encrypt and have keys off core, and don't let the sysadmins get to those keys. Not even your tenant secrets and things like that. So that's how they do the governmental level, blueprints of a missile, or, spies and agencies and things like that. So not here for Salesforce, but you might have some of these scenarios that you might run into at clients. Now you know how to find them. Hope this was helpful. And for all of you, if you want to I have my little plug for free. Steve Tech-Arc. I do my videos. I have about 100 plus videos that I do, and I'm releasing more. So I do all these crazy videos on my YouTube. So you'll find most of my use cases and diagrams all for free. Let me get my YouTube. Let me just go to my channel. And again, not selling anything, but I have the Data Cloud diaries, the integrations, all my different ones here are my playlist. And I'm about to crank out a bunch more. I just love sharing and teaching. I'm not trying to monetize it. I'm just trying to help build more architects around. I hope this was helpful. And Matt was actually at Your Architect Dreaming, helped me come up with some of the crazy scenarios and vet them.
And if you want to learn a little bit more about security, I have a book on Salesforce security where a customer of mine was hacked in Salesforce. None of you bought it. And it's at our table, and it's going to a good cause to help educate people on security.
Any Apex programmers here? So Matt found that if you took and enabled an Apex class for a user profile, they could call all the methods on that Apex class. So what's that? So imagine a user logs in. Let's say you have a little Apex class that like says get, it's a utility class. Do you ever create a utility class with like 50 methods? And if you call one of those methods and you grant access to that Apex class to the user profile, like say guest user profile, now that guest user profile could call any of those methods that you bundled your utilities. Any programmers bundle their methods into a utility class? What's that? Yeah, like 50. You get like a whole bunch, and you don't realize by them able to call one gives them access to the whole class. They can call them all. And so
I think like the key was that Salesforce used to say, you know, or this the practice was before, was you create your Apex classes by business case. But now you should be creating your Apex classes by security persona instead.
So imagine breaking up all your utility classes by the persona. So you're going to create a lot more Apex classes because once you grant access, you've granted them all these other methods you didn't realize. And then if they can run a system access. So, you know, let alone the storing of viruses in your attachments. So you have virus attachments, which we saw, which Matt's company deals with, along with the sponsor. And I'm not, but also the hacking, the things. So we're paranoid CTAs, so we wanted to share with you. Hope this was helpful. We love sharing. Again, I'm not selling anything. Just hope you get your brains going.